I never thought a card with gold lettering could make my stomach turn. But there I was, standing in the kitchen of my little rental in Montpelier, Vermont, holding an envelope that practically screamed, "You don't belong here." It was an invitation to a party from my little sister Sabrina to celebrate her being named Vermont Educator of the Year. The party would be at my mother's house. Joanne Quinn, queen of passive-aggressive dinner prayers and backhanded praise. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in over 4 years. Not since I walked out with a guitar on my back, a duffel bag of clothes, and a baby no one offered to hold. Let me back up. My name's Harper. I'm 36. I used to be a musician. Indie folk stuff. Mostly played in bars and breweries and those awkward coffee shop sets where no one claps because they're too busy texting. Now I'm a librarian. Not the cool kind who runs author events or gets featured in TikToks. The kind who fixes paper jams, helps old men print fishing licenses, and eats lunch behind a book return bin. I live with my son Micah. He's 10. Bright, thoughtful, painfully observant. He's the reason I don't fall apart on Tuesdays when the fridge is almost empty, or on Fridays when my paycheck reminds me that dreams don't pay rent. Sabrina, my younger sister by 4 years, took the opposite path. Straight A student, full scholarship, early marriage, 3 kids, perfect teeth, endless Pinterest boards. She stayed. She became exactly what my mom hoped I would be. And I became the example Joanne uses when warning Sabrina's kids what happens when you chase rainbows instead of responsibilities. I didn't expect an invitation. I figured I was a family footnote by now. So when that envelope arrived, I laughed. Loud, bitter. Then Micah came out of his room, saw me holding the card, and asked, "What's that?" And I froze. He's never been to Grandma Joanne's house. He's never met his cousins in person, just weirdly posed Christmas photos on Facebook. He doesn't know the history, the fights, the frozen dinners eaten in silence, the way Mom once called my music a phase that stinks up the couch. He looked at the card like it was a key to a door I'd locked years ago. "I get to go?" he asked, eyes wide. "Will there be cake?" I don't know what hit harder, his excitement or the fact that I didn't want him anywhere near that house. But I said yes, because he was smiling, and because a part of me, a tiny, stupid, traitorous part, still wondered if this was some olive branch. Maybe Sabrina wanted to include me. Maybe Joanne had softened. Maybe people can grow. I should have known better. The text from Sabrina came 3 days later. "Hey Harp, so glad you're coming. Just a heads up. Table space is tight, so we've got you and Micah at the kids' station in the sunroom. Hope that's cool. Also, dress code is garden formal." Garden formal. I haven't owned a dress that fits since Obama was president. Micah doesn't even own dress shoes. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I looked over at him on the couch. His socks mismatched, hair a mess, humming some Star Wars theme he made up on the spot. He caught me staring. "What?" he said, grinning. "I'm not gonna fart during the cake if that's what you're worried about." I laughed and something in me cracked. We were going. Even if I had to thrift the whole outfit. Even if I had to glue the soles back on Micah's shoes. Even if I had to sit in that sunroom like a damn exhibit. But I didn't know the worst part yet. That wasn't the moment that would burn itself into me. That came later, when Sabrina passed me the mic and said with a smirk, "Come on, say a few words. Don't worry, this crowd's used to disappointments." I stared at her for a second. Sabrina, standing there in her lavender wrap dress and kitten heels, holding out the mic with that same polished smile she wore when she told me I was brave for not wearing concealer at Thanksgiving. People were watching. Of course they were. This was her party, her moment, her house, her version of me. Micah glanced up from his plastic cup of ginger ale. He gave me a thumbs up. Like I was about to perform or something. God. I stood slowly, took the mic. My hand was actually shaking, which pissed me off, and gave the tightest smile I could manage. "I'll keep this short," I started. Sabrina and I grew up in the same house, but somehow she always made it feel like home. That got a little laugh. She tilted her head like she wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a dig. It wasn't either. It was just true. I'm proud of her, I continued. She's the kind of teacher every kid deserves. Organized, brilliant, makes homemade flashcards for fun. Still do? She interrupted, flipping her hair. More laughter. I forced a smile. Was about to hand the mic back when Joanne cut in from the main table. You forgot to mention how supportive she was when you were out chasing that, what was it, guitar dream? Someone choked on a sip of rosé. I felt the heat rise up my chest. My grip on the mic tightened. I opened my mouth, maybe to say something, maybe to just breathe. But Sabrina reached over and gently took the mic from my hand. Thanks, Harp, she said, turning back to the guests. That was sweet. She smiled wide, looking out over the room like a politician at a podium. And yes, Harper and I are very different. She's the wild one. Always was. Remember when she dyed her hair blue the night before Aunt Cheryl's funeral? More laughter. I stood there, still within arm's reach, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. She's creative, Sabrina continued. Impulsive, free-spirited, which, sometimes meant disappearing for long stretches when Micah was little. But we don't judge, right? I stopped breathing. People shifted in their seats, some laughed nervously. Others looked straight down at their plates. And I mean, look at her now, Sabrina said, grinning like she'd just handed me a bouquet. She turned it all around. Shelving books, being present. That's growth, right? My face felt hot. My hands were numb. I couldn't move. Joanne raised her wine glass. To Harper, she said, not looking at me. Proof that even if you fall far, you can still land somewhere. Stable. That was the moment. Not the insults, not the digs, not even the lie about me leaving Micah. It was when I looked at him, my son, my sweet, wide-eyed, spaceship-loving kid. He wasn't smiling. His mouth was slightly open. He looked confused, like someone had just kicked over his Lego set and called it art. I sat down hard. He leaned over and whispered, Mom, did you really leave me? That nearly broke me. I couldn't answer. My throat was raw. Because yes, I had left for a few weeks once. When Micah was barely 1, I was in the middle of a breakdown, barely functioning, sleeping 2 hours a night, bleeding money, bleeding hope. I left him with my best friend while I checked into a mental health facility in Albany. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't brave, it was survival. And no one in that house, not my sister, not my mother, had ever asked why. Sabrina handed the mic off to someone else, and the party rolled on like nothing happened. Music started back up. People passed around those little toothpick meatballs. I couldn't hear any of it. Micah was looking at me with a mix of worry and something new. Something I didn't recognize right away. Maybe doubt, maybe shame. God. I stood up. I wasn't going to cry, not here. Not in front of people who only ever showed up to watch me fall. I touched Micah's shoulder and whispered, Let's take a walk. He nodded, stood, and took my hand. And just as we turned to leave, I heard it. Clear, soft, from behind the buffet table. Harper, wait. It was my father's voice. I hadn't seen him in 6 years. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't even invited. We turned, and there he was, my dad. Same tired eyes, same faded Red Sox cap he used to wear when he picked us up from school. Only now he looked smaller, grayer, like someone had turned down the saturation on him. Micah blinked. That's Grandpa? I hadn't said that name in years, not out loud. Yeah, I said quietly, unsure what else to call him. He stepped forward, slow and stiff, like his bones didn't trust him anymore. No one else noticed. The music was back. Someone was handing out cupcakes with edible glitter, and Joanne was clinking a fork against her wine glass, trying to rally another toast. But he walked right past all of it. Past Sabrina. Past Joanne. stopped in front of me, and said the words I never expected to hear. "I'm sorry." It wasn't loud, but I heard every syllable. It hit harder than all the applause in that damn room combined. "I should have stood up for you," he said, voice rough like gravel. "Back then. Just now. Always." I didn't know what to say. Micah tightened his grip on my hand, like he wasn't sure if we should trust this moment. "You shouldn't have come," I finally said. "They'll hate you for this." He gave a half smile. "They already do. I just didn't want you thinking I did too." That almost undid me. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. It wasn't one of those movie scenes where the violins swell and everyone gasps. But he looked at Micah and said, "Your mom's the bravest person I've ever known." And then he walked out, like he'd only come to say those exact words, like he'd been carrying them in his chest for years, waiting for the right crack to pour them through. I stood there, completely still, and for a second, I thought maybe the worst was over. But life doesn't work like that. A moment later, someone turned off the music. Then we heard it. That voice. Joanne. Stern, cold, cutting through the air like glass. "Micah," she called out, loudly enough for the room to hear. "Do you want to know what your mom really did during those years she was finding herself?" Sabrina tried to step in. "Mom, don't..." But she kept going. "She left you with strangers, while she shacked up with a married drummer in Portland. I have the emails. I kept everything." Every head in the room turned. Someone gasped. A fork clattered onto a plate. I felt my knees lock. Micah turned to me, eyes wide, searching my face for something solid. And then, before I could speak, defend myself, explain, he did something I'll never forget. He walked, not away, forward, straight toward the front of the room, toward the makeshift stage where Sabrina's Teacher of the Year banner still hung like a threat. He climbed up on the stool next to the mic, adjusted it, and spoke. "My mom sings me to sleep when I have nightmares," he said. "She makes pancakes in the shape of dinosaurs, and she tells the truth even when it hurts." The room was dead silent. "So if she did mess up back then," he continued, his voice trembling, "it's none of your business. She didn't mess up with me." Someone started clapping. A slow, awkward clap, then another. But Micah just got down, walked back over to me and whispered, "You don't have to say anything. I already know." And that was the twist no one saw coming. It wasn't Callum or a mic drop speech or some viral video that changed everything. It was my kid, 10 years old, standing in the middle of a room that wanted to laugh at me and saying, "Enough. I'm not gonna lie." When we got home that night, I cried. Not the silent, pretty kind of crying either. The messy, breathless kind. The kind that makes your throat burn and your heart feel like it's cracking in half. Because even though I walked away from that party with my dignity still intact, I also walked away with a bruise I don't think will fade anytime soon. If you've ever had your worst moments weaponized by your own family, if you've ever watched people smile while they strip you down in front of your child, if you've ever had to pretend you're fine just to survive the night, I see you. And I hope one day, someone in your life looks at you the way my son looked at me that night. Like you're worth defending. Even when the whole room thinks otherwise. We didn't go back to the table. Not after that. Micah and I walked straight out the back door of that party, down the steps, through the little rose garden Joanne planted when Sabrina got her first teaching job. She once told me I'd ruin the symmetry if I stepped in it barefoot. I remember that. I didn't cry this time. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But the kind of hurt I felt wasn't soft. It was sharp, focused. You ever have one of those moments where the air around you shifts? Like the universe stops being subtle and just snaps something into place? That was me, walking down that garden path with my son beside me and 100 pairs of eyes behind us, pretending they didn't just witness a 10-year-old tell the truth louder than all of them combined. We got in the car. Micah buckled up in silence. Then he turned and said, "I don't want to go there ever again." I nodded. "We won't." That should have been the end. Fade out. Quiet dignity. Lesson learned. But I couldn't shake it. The way Joanne stood there, glass raised, ready to scorch earth just to protect the image she built around Sabrina. The way Sabrina watched it happen and didn't say a word. The way I'd been quiet for years, and somehow they still managed to rewrite my story in front of my child, like I wasn't standing right there. I wasn't doing silence anymore. The next day, I took Micah to school, went to the library, and clocked in. Then I walked straight into the break room and opened my laptop. I wrote a post. Not a rant. Not a look what they did to me sob story. I wrote my story. Plain and full. What really happened when Micah was a baby. Why I left for 3 weeks. Who stepped up when no one else did. How Joanne told people I went on tour with a drummer while I was sitting in a room with no shoelaces and a nurse named April asking if I wanted to try coloring to manage panic attacks. I ended it like this. If survival makes you a villain in someone else's story, write your own. I hit post. Didn't expect much. Maybe a few likes. Maybe someone I went to college with would DM a, "You okay?" But something weird happened. People shared it. People commented. Single moms, former addicts, people with stories that never fit neatly inside family albums. They said, I needed to read this. Micah came home that day and said someone's mom at school asked if I was the brave lady from Facebook. I almost laughed. But then the real twist came. I got a message from a name I didn't recognize. Rachel Connors. Apparently, she's a writer for this online publication that focuses on family dynamics, mental health, resilience, the real stuff. She said she read my post, said she'd been at the party, said she was Sabrina's coworker. Her exact words, "It was the quietest mic drop I've ever seen. If you're willing, I'd love to run your piece in our next feature." Not as gossip. As truth, I just stared at my screen. Rachel. From the same school Sabrina teaches at. That's when it hit me. Sabrina might be Teacher of the Year, but I'd just taught an entire community something louder than any award speech ever could. You don't have to burn down the house to reclaim your name. Sometimes you just have to tell the truth. Out loud. And if that had been all, I'd have slept well. But that night, Micah came out of bed around 10, rubbing his eyes. He said, "Mom, can I ask something weird?" "Sure, baby." "If you wrote your story, does that mean they can't steal it anymore?" I blinked, because it never occurred to me. He wasn't just watching me survive. He was watching me take it back. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. Next morning, I opened my inbox and saw a formal complaint filed to Sabrina's school board. Anonymous. Attached was a link to the video from the party. Micah's speech. Joanne's shacking up with a married drummer line. And a copy of my original post. Subject line, "Is this who represents our district?" 2 days after the email hit the district inbox, the silence started. Not the usual, awkward family silence I'd gotten used to. This one was colder. Corporate. Official. Sabrina stopped posting. Her usual carousel of lunchbox ideas and classroom crafts just vanished. No new stories, no boomerangs of coffee cups and "I'm exhausted" captions. Then came the call. Not to me. To my dad. He called that evening. Voice tight, like someone was standing just outside his door. "She's being reviewed," he said quietly. "The school board is meeting Monday. Parents are asking questions. There's a copy of Micah's speech floating around with Spanish subtitles." I didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of Micah's bed and listened to the sound of him breathing while he slept. The next week felt surreal. I got a package at work, no return address. Inside was a small velvet box and a note card. "For the moments you stayed quiet when you could have burned the whole place down." It was my grandmother's necklace. The one Joanne had said was better off with Sabrina because I didn't have the temperament to carry legacy jewelry. I didn't ask questions. I just wore it. Then on Friday, I got a text from Rachel Connors. "It's official. Sabrina's been placed on administrative leave while they review conduct unbecoming of a district leader. You didn't do this. Her choices did. Your truth just didn't flinch. That night, I let Micah stay up late. We made popcorn and watched School of Rock for the 50th time. At one point, he said, "Mom, you could totally be in a band like that." And for the first time in years, I didn't laugh it off. I just smiled. Yeah, maybe. The next morning, Joanne called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. "You've humiliated your sister. She's devastated. Whatever satisfaction you feel, I hope it was worth tearing this family apart." And you know what? I listened to every word. Then I deleted it. No rage. No tears. Because that's what they never understood. I didn't want to tear the family apart. I just stopped taping myself back together so they could keep pretending it wasn't broken. And the real kicker? Micah's teacher pulled me aside after school that week. Said he's been more talkative, more confident. Said he gave a presentation on what courage looks like and brought in a photo of me holding him at age 2 with a quote, "My mom didn't quit. That's why I won't either." Yeah, I cried in the parking lot. Not because I was sad, because it finally felt like everything had cracked in the right direction. Sabrina still hasn't called. Joanne hasn't either. The family group chat I was never in got mysteriously deleted, but I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I'm still working at the library, still making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, still learning that taking up space after being told to shrink isn't arrogance. It's survival. And I'll say this, loud and clear, for anyone who's ever swallowed shame to keep peace. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped watering the fire. The lesson I learned? Sometimes telling the truth quietly is the loudest thing you'll ever do. And the people who love you will hear it, even if they're only 10 years old. If this hit something in you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. We've all had a moment we wish someone else saw. Maybe this is the place someone finally will. And if you're sticking around for more stories like this, thanks. It means a lot just to be heard.